Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
We need to remember also that although we are a strong and prosperous nation, that we are interrelated with other countries, and we do need to develop the ability to discuss and solve problems. Because one thing I found out, being in a camp, here we were, in our particular camp, there were about 18,000 people. We were all basically the same culture because we were all Japanese or Japanese-Americans. I think I'll begin with the beginning of the war. We were living in California. My father was a farmer, and on that Sunday morning, I was out in the field running a tractor to cut down some of the weeds that grow out there. Now you think, now that's strange. How can anybody be out on a farm running a tractor in the middle of winter? But out there in California, it never snows, and the ground never freezes, which means that all through the winter, the weeds continue to grow, and if you leave it unattended, by springtime, the weeds would just, beyond reach. So even throughout the winter, we used to have to go out and cut these weeds down, and that was my job, helping out on the farm. And I came in for lunch, and my sister, that's Aunt Yuki, she comes running out, and she says, "Japan has attacked Pearl Harbor."
Your commentator is Joe O'Brien.
Japan has attacked Pearl Harbor, and I couldn't believe what she was telling me, because how could anyone think of starting a war, And at that time, I didn't even know what Pearl Harbor was, to tell you the truth. As we listened to the radio and got the news, we realized that Pearl Harbor was a naval base in Hawaii, and that the Pacific Fleet was out there. As we continued to listen to the news, I got more and more angry, because I got the feeling, how can anybody, it's almost like if somebody broke into your home and shot your parents or your family and then trashed the house. That's the way it felt, to have your country suddenly attacked by a foreign nation. Then I got to worrying, now what is that going to mean? Does this mean war? Yes. And if war comes, what about my education? After graduating from high school, I was in high school at the time, I was in my junior year, I was 17 years old. So I had another year of high school to go before graduating, and after that I had planned to go to college to study engineering, and this meant, how am I going to continue with my education? What am I going to do in the future? Well, the future was pretty much decided. When in May of that year, President Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, because the Monday after Pearl Harbor, the high school principal called a General Assembly, and we all sat in this assembly room and listened to President Roosevelt give that famous speech on the Day of Infamy. I don't know if any of you watch History Channel, but that was the speech that he made, and he asked for Congress to declare war. The way he put it was, a state of war now exists between the United States of America and the Empire of Japan. So that was the declaration of war and the beginning of what we call the evacuation or the resettlement.
When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, our west coast became a potential combat zone. Living in that zone were more than 100,000 persons of Japanese ancestry, 2/3 of them American citizens, 1/3 aliens. We knew that some among them were potentially dangerous. Most were loyal, but no one knew what would happen among this concentrated population if Japanese forces should try to invade our shores. Military authorities therefore determined that all of them, citizens and aliens alike, would have to move. This picture tells how the mass migration was accomplished.
This poster was posted in all the telephone poles throughout all the towns in California, and it says instructions to all persons of Japanese ancestry living in the following areas. Now that meant anybody that had relatives or their parents or their grandparents or whoever that were of Japanese ancestry, that meant even citizen. And at first I thought, well, now wait a minute, maybe these older people are of Japanese citizenship, but I'm an American citizen because I was born in the United States, and I shouldn't have to go. But the way the law read, it was everybody, including the citizens.
I am wholly living or dead. She still doesn't answer. She's blind. She can't see her visitors, let alone what is in their hands. She doesn't know their color, their gender, or their homeland. She only knows their motive. The old woman's silence is so long, the young people have trouble.
And so we had to start making preparations to move out of where we were living, leave everything behind. We were only allowed to take one suitcase and whatever you could carry, as well as the clothes on your back. So to try to either store or dispose of or pack what we could carry, it was a tough job. I think everybody realized that, well, we're here. Instead of protesting or having demonstrations, why not try to work together and see if we can make a life better? And that's why the farmers were able to go out to the farms to raise crops, and the residents, some worked in the maintenance to help run the camp, others were teachers. We had a high school that they started. We had the head of each department or each subject was usually a teacher from the outside, and they were the lead teacher, and then there were assistant teachers who were residents, young people who had gone to college. They had some college education, some had degrees. As a matter of fact, our physics teacher was a PhD that had gone to the University of Washington, and he taught physics. My algebra teacher was Miss Pearson, and she was a Canadian, I understand. We tried to have school as much as possible like it was normally on the outside. And so there were a lot of experiences that was helpful to us, but I think we need to credit the teachers. To a large extent, life is what you make of it. And if you have the motivation and the interest and the desire to go on, you can, in spite of what your difficulties and what your, what obstacles you have, you can overcome them if you have the spirit to do it. And I think I have to credit my parents and many of the others. There were like, all told, I think of all the people, there were like 4 different groups of people. What we call the Isseis were the first generation immigrants that came from Japan to make a life here in America. I was a Nisei, that's means ni is 2. 2 is ni, so that's the second generation. And then there were the Kibeis called. The Kibeis were men and girls that were born in the United States, but their parents thought that in order to have a good formal education, they should go back and be educated in Japan. So even though they were natural-born citizens, they also had a Japanese education. So there was those groups, and you can tell right away almost what the characteristics are. The Issei, of course, are more traditional. They're used to their old customs and ways. The Niseis, of course, were all educated in the United States. They had gone to American public school. So they were almost purely American. Okay? To us, Japan was a foreign country. I have never been to Japan, and I think I have some relatives there, but I've never met them. I never knew my grandparents. So to me, Japan was a foreign country. This was my home, and to be pulled out of your home, put into a camp along with all these other people, it is quite an experience.